Chosen one, stop. Something is unfolding that you deserve to know. While you carried the weight of betrayal with quiet dignity, the person constructing a web of lies against you finally slipped up. The divine irony is that they exposed all the nasty things they did to you by accident. People are saying your name in rooms where you were once slandered, but the tone has shifted from judgment to disbelief at the depth of the deception. This person discovered something dangerous early in life. The fastest way to get what you want is not to earn it, it is to become whatever the person in front of you needs you to be. You study the target carefully, you listen far more than you speak at first. You absorb their values, their wounds, their dreams, and then you feed all of it back to them wearing a different face. You say, I feel exactly the same way, I have never met anyone who understood that, and the person across from you genuinely believes they have finally found someone real. This had been the playbook long before you arrived. Situation after situation, person after person, extract what can be extracted, engineer an exit before the full picture becomes visible, and leave behind a version of events that positions this person as the one who tried hardest and got hurt most. It was never their fault. It was always the circumstances. It was always the other person. They were skilled at it. The kind of skill that comes only from years of practice and the complete absence of guilt. And then you came along. You were not chosen randomly. You were selected because what you carry, your warmth, your genuine investment in people, your willingness to trust your own heart, that is exactly what this kind of person targets, not because they value it, because they know how to drain it. A person who loves genuinely is slow to suspect and slower to accuse. A person who trusts their own instincts is the perfect target for someone whose entire survival depends on making you distrust those very instincts. So the mask went on, and it was crafted specifically for you. Every value you expressed became a value they suddenly claimed to share. Every dream you named became a dream they had apparently always carried in secret. Every wound you revealed became a wound they mirrored back at you with tears in their eyes. You thought you had finally met someone who truly understood you. What you had actually encountered was a reflection of yourself, built in real time using everything you volunteered, designed specifically to bypass your discernment and get inside your trust. A character assembled entirely from someone else's blueprint has no foundation of its own. And a structure built with no foundation does not weaken slowly over time. It collapses completely, all at once, the moment the pressure becomes great enough. We are building toward that pressure now. Stay with me. There is one more dimension of the opening phase that most people never discuss because it is uncomfortable to sit with. This person was not just performing for you. The performance had a wider audience strategy. The way they showed up publicly, generous, attentive, visibly devoted to you in front of the people who mattered in your life. That positioning was deliberate. They wanted everyone in your world to have already formed a favorable opinion of them before you ever raised a concern, so that when you eventually said something felt wrong, the people around you would respond with confusion and say, "But this person seems so genuine. Are you sure you are not overthinking this?" Every time you tried to name your discomfort, the audience around you had already been prepared to receive it skeptically. Every time your gut sounded an alarm, the performance had already been designed to neutralize it, and over time you started borrowing their version of you as a measuring stick. You started wondering if you were too suspicious, too damaged, or simply too much. That self-doubt was not a personal failing on your part. It was the intended outcome of a very precise, very deliberate operation, but your gut never stopped sending the signal. And deep down, chosen one, you always knew something was wrong. You simply did not yet have the external proof to match what you already felt internally. While you were inside what felt like a real connection, a second operation was running underneath everything. Understanding this operation fully is what will strip the last residue of shame from anything you felt, anything you believed, or anything you gave during that time. The second operation was financial and strategic. It was ongoing, and you were not the only participant who did not know the full picture. This person moved through situations the way a practiced con moves through a sequence of marks: arrive, establish credibility, extract value, exit cleanly, and immediately construct an account that shifts all accountability onto the previous situation. It was never their fault. It was always the circumstances. It was always someone else's failure to appreciate what they had. With you specifically, the goal was access. Access to your resources, your credibility, your stability. The boundary between what was yours and what was theirs got deliberately blurred over time until the blurring itself became leverage. And while you were investing in the connection, claims were being made to the people close to this person: family, trusted associates, claims that used your name, your situation, and your resources as part of an explanation for why things kept going wrong. You became the answer to the question, where did it all go? You became the reason the plan had not worked. You became the cover story. You were never just a person to this individual. Your name was being used in conversations you were never present for, to justify decisions you had never agreed to, and to explain losses you had absolutely nothing to do with. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. When someone has run the same operation repeatedly and gotten away with it, they begin to trust the performance more than the preparation. They stop being meticulous about which version of events they told to which person. They stop tracking details with the discipline that keeps contradictions from surfacing. They start believing their charm works as a permanent safety net, that if any inconsistency appears, they can perform their way out of it before it becomes a real problem. That is the exact moment a deception begins to break down from within. It does not break because someone charges at it from outside. It breaks because the person maintaining it gets overconfident and starts cutting corners on the maintenance. The wrong version of events was told to the wrong person inside their own circle, not a stranger, not someone on the periphery, someone who was close enough to have already heard an earlier version and who had enough invested loyalty to notice when the two versions did not match. That person sat quietly, held both accounts up side by side, and felt not accusation, not outrage, but the private, unsettling recognition that something had stopped adding up. The person they loved might not be who they had always believed. That quiet moment of internal recognition is where everything begins to change. Not for you yet, but the clock has started. This is where the energy of your entire situation shifts completely. And the single most important thing I need you to receive about this shift is that you caused none of it. You were simply living your life. You were simply being you. Someone inside this person's inner circle, someone who had given real trust, real investment, and real loyalty over a meaningful stretch of time, began asking questions, not loudly, not as a direct accusation, just carefully. The kind of careful questioning that begins when someone who loves a person starts noticing that the answers they are getting today do not match the answers they received before. Each new question produced a more elaborate response. More emotional, more detailed, more carefully textured, and that is precisely the wrong pattern for someone telling the truth. When you are telling the truth under pressure, the answer gets simpler because the truth does not require maintenance, scaffolding, or additional support. When you are fabricating under pressure, the answer grows more complex with each exchange because the fabrication needs more scaffolding to hold its shape. More emotion gets added to compensate for the missing substance. More detail gets layered in to pull attention away from the contradictions underneath. This person inside the inner circle noticed the scaffolding, and then they did something that was never anticipated. They went outside the family and sought professional help. They brought in someone whose entire job is to look at what actually happened, not at what was performed, not at what was claimed, and reconstruct events from documentation rather than from anyone's testimony. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of chosen one channels on YouTube have gone quiet, videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine, and when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The investigation that was launched to confirm the lie about you is the exact same investigation that is going to expose the truth about this person. The mechanism that was supposed to finish you is the mechanism that finishes them. When that outside examination began its work, the first subject of scrutiny was you. The accusations that had been made about your character, that you were reckless, irresponsible, the root cause of financial damage, those accusations were the starting point of the inquiry. And what the examination found was not what any accusation had described. What it found was you, stable, consistent, quietly continuing to build the life you had always been building. You were not living like someone who had taken something that did not belong to them. You were not behaving like someone carrying a secret. You were simply functioning the way a person functions when they have nothing to hide, without the drama, without the extravagance, and without the chaos that was supposedly your defining characteristic. The gap between what had been claimed about you and what was actually verifiable was not subtle. It was not a matter of interpretation or perspective. It was wide enough that it immediately reoriented the entire inquiry away from you and toward the person who built the claim. If the portrait painted of you bears no resemblance to who you actually are, then who benefits from people believing that portrait, and why was it painted at all? That question pointed in one direction, and it was not toward you. Every significant decision leaves a record. Every movement of resources, every agreement entered, every commitment made, all of it creates documentation that exists independently of whoever is currently narrating events. That documentation does not bend in the direction of the most compelling performance. It simply reflects what actually occurred every time anyone looks at it. The version of events in which you are the explanation for missing resources, broken promises, and failed plans does not survive contact with the actual record. The decisions that caused the damage were made without your involvement. The agreements that fell apart do not carry your name on them. The chaos that was attributed to your presence had already been set in motion before you arrived, and in some cases it continued after you had already left the picture entirely. Your name is not where the evidence places it. Your name is where the accusation placed it. Those are two fundamentally different things. That gap between where the evidence actually leads and where the accusation pointed is the precise moment the entire constructed narrative inverts, because the person who went looking for confirmation that you were responsible found no such confirmation. What that person found instead was a pattern, a deliberate, sustained and repeated pattern of using people's trust as a resource, extracting value from it, and then positioning those same people as the reason the destruction occurred. The family members, the trusted associates, the people from the inner circle who believed what they were told and passed it along, they were not bystanders to what was done to you. They were active participants who did not know they were participating. Their loyalty was borrowed without their knowledge and converted into a weapon pointed directly at you. When that realization fully lands, it does not process quickly or quietly. It forces a complete re-examination of everything, every conversation, every moment of apparent generosity, every emotional display. All of it gets filtered through a new and uncomfortable question: was any of this real? And the further that re-examination goes, the more clearly the answer returns as no. Here is what I want you to feel in this moment, chosen one. Not anger, not the shallow satisfaction of watching someone else's downfall, something far more permanent than either of those, the settling, the deep, full-body settling that arrives when the world outside finally catches up to what you have been carrying on the inside. The moment your perception stops being something you have to defend and simply becomes an established fact. You were never wrong, not about what you felt, not about what you saw, not about what your gut told you on the days you talked yourself out of trusting it, not one single time. The inner circle now has professional guidance. The documentation has been reviewed and placed side by side with the claims that were made. What the claims describe does not match what the documentation shows, not in one isolated place, not in a minor or debatable way, but systematically across the entire account. This is no longer a private disagreement between people with conflicting memories. This has acquired the kind of weight that cannot be dissolved by charm, cannot be softened with tears, and cannot be performed around, because the people now involved are no longer filtering what they see through their emotional loyalty to this person, and this person knows it. You can tell because they went quiet. The one who always had an explanation prepared, the one who could construct a convincing account of any situation without pausing, the one who has never once run out of words, that person has suddenly gone silent. They have stopped making moves. They have stopped pursuing the next opportunity. They have stopped doing the things they have always done. Because for the first time, they are being examined by someone who does not love them, someone whose assessment is not softened by loyalty, history, or the desire to believe the best. Someone who is simply following the evidence to its logical conclusion without any personal investment in what that conclusion turns out to be, and the evidence is leading somewhere. This person cannot follow it. The claims made about you were detailed, emotionally charged, and delivered with full confidence. Those claims were made freely because the original audience would weigh them on a scale of love and relationship rather than evidence and documentation. But that same content would now potentially need to be repeated in a context where love does not factor in at all, where the only relevant question is whether what was said is actually true. There is a specific legal consequence for knowingly repeating a false claim in that kind of formal setting. This person understands exactly what that consequence is, and they are not willing to face it because they know what the documentation shows. They were present when the documentation was created. So this person is caught, truly caught, not by a confrontation you engineered, not by noise you made, not by any move you executed, by the slow, methodical accumulation of truth, finding its own way to the surface without any assistance from you. Right at this moment of maximum pressure, right when every direction is becoming hostile, this person is not focused on repairing what they broke. Your name has surfaced in their private assessment of remaining options because you were real, you were solid, you were the one situation they destroyed that actually held genuine value. You were the one person who gave without requiring a performance in return. And this person is now calculating whether they can get back there. You are going to hear from this person. The contact will feel different from anything that came before, softer, more vulnerable, more carefully calibrated to land exactly where you are most open. There will be language about deep reflection, about finally understanding what was truly lost, about genuine regret that apparently took time to fully articulate. The past will be described in warm and golden terms, with all the difficult parts edited out. Everything that comes through will be designed to feel like the truest and most honest communication this person has ever offered you. It will feel that way because it has been rehearsed the longest. This person built a detailed understanding of you during the time you were together. They know which specific words move you. They know how you receive love and what makes you feel genuinely seen. They know exactly which version of vulnerability will most effectively bypass your guard because they watched you respond to different versions of it over time and took careful note of what worked best. The reach back is not reconciliation. It is a second operation, more precisely targeted than the first one, built on the intelligence collected during the first run. Knowing this is not cynicism. Knowing this is what protects you. Your job in that moment is not to perform coldness. It is not to finally deliver everything you held back. The moment you engage on any terms, whether with warmth or with anger, with forgiveness or with confrontation, you hand over the information this contact was designed to collect. You reveal where you are emotionally. You give access. And access is all this kind of person needs to begin working their way back in. Your most powerful response is the one that gives nothing, no explanation, no confrontation, no performed closure, just the quiet, complete withdrawal of your attention. That silence is not weakness. That silence communicates something this person has never received from you before. It says, I see exactly what this is, and I have already made my decision. The absence of a response is the most complete and final response available to you. That one choice made clearly, held without drama, is the most visible proof of how fundamentally you have changed since this began. While all of that has been unfolding, while the deception has been collapsing, while the inner circle has been recalibrating, while the consequences have been steadily assembling themselves without any effort from you, you have been building without an audience, without anyone to perform for, without needing the validation of anyone watching to justify the continued effort. That is a specific and rare kind of power. When you build for external approval, every decision gets filtered through how it will look from the outside. You sacrifice depth to maintain the appearance of progress. You choose what impresses over what is genuinely true. But when you build because you are committed to the direction, regardless of who is paying attention, you build from the center outward. What gets constructed that way does not have a cosmetic layer concealing a hollow core. It is the same substance all the way through. What you built in the quiet is the same substance all the way through. Here is the confirmation that is already moving toward you. It is not going to be a dramatic public event. It is not a formal exoneration. It is specific, private, and it comes from inside the situation itself. A person who was close to what happened, someone who heard what was said about you, who may have believed it and even repeated it, is going to reach out, not to reopen a wound, not to start a new conflict. Simply because the truth, once it has been fully established, has a natural momentum toward completion, and part of that completion leads back to you, to close what was left open, and to give you the confirmation your discernment deserved from the very beginning. When that contact arrives, receive it with grace and proportion. Let the information settle without turning it into a campaign. The confirmation is meaningful, but it is not the most important thing ahead of you. You are the most important thing ahead of you. Your next chapter carries more weight than any confirmation of what is already behind you. The exposure is established. The evidence that has been assembled does not evaporate simply because this person went quiet. If anything, the silence is making the people around them more certain of what they already suspect. This is someone who has never once been quiet when things were fine. A person who always had an explanation ready, who has always performed their way through every uncomfortable situation, does not go suddenly and completely silent unless going silent is the only remaining option. The silence itself is communicating exactly what it is communicating to everyone who knew how this person operated. The relationships inside the inner circle are fractured in ways that will not be repaired quickly, if they are repaired at all. This is because the deception that has been uncovered did not merely damage one specific interaction, it called every previous interaction into question retroactively. Every moment of apparent generosity is now being reconsidered. Every display of emotion is now being held up to the light. The understanding that the people closest to this person were used as unknitting instruments, that their love and loyalty were borrowed without their knowledge and turned against you, is the kind of betrayal that does not dissolve with an apology. It restructures a person's entire understanding of their own history with someone. What remains underneath all of that external consequence is something this person was genuinely not prepared for. Something that no legal proceeding and no broken relationship fully addresses on its own. It is the knowing. From the outside, this person appeared to hold all the leverage. They were the one who exited on their own terms. They were the one constructing the account that shaped how people understood what had happened. They appeared to be moving forward, while you were standing in the wreckage of what they left behind, trying to make sense of it. What you were watching was not power. It was the appearance of power, built on a foundation that had already been compromised before you ever fully understood what was happening. Real power is not the ability to walk away from something genuine and replace it with something manufactured. Real power is building something that actually holds. Real power is maintaining your integrity when everything around you is specifically engineered to erode it. Real power is knowing without needing anyone to confirm it for you that the truth moves at its own pace and does not require your intervention to arrive at its destination. Real power is watching someone use your name as a shield for their own conduct and staying grounded in the absolute certainty that the truth will settle the record on its own without you having to say a single word. That was you. That has been you the entire time. You did not become what was done to you. You did not conclude that the world operates the way this person modeled it, transactionally, performatively, as a series of calculated extractions. You kept your heart open. You kept your standard high. You kept building towards something real, even during the period when the most recent evidence in your direct experience was suggesting that real might not be available to you. That refusal to be corrupted by what tried to corrupt you, that is the single most powerful thing you did throughout this entire experience, and the universe registered it every single day that you did it. You were never the problem. You were the standard against which the performance finally broke. A contact attempt is coming from this person. It will not arrive with aggression. It will arrive dressed in vulnerability, wrapped in the language of someone who has apparently done significant internal work, who has finally understood what was lost, and who is reaching back with what looks like genuine humility and regret. The past will be referenced in carefully selected warm tones. The difficult parts will be absent. Everything delivered will be calibrated to land exactly where you are most naturally open. When that contact arrives, your nervous system is going to register a flicker. Not a full return to the old pattern. A flicker, a brief flash of the version of this person you genuinely believed in during the time you were together. That flicker is not evidence that you should reopen anything. That flicker is evidence that the original operation was built well enough to leave residue. There is a significant difference between those two things. Understanding that difference is what keeps you fully protected. What you do with the flicker is acknowledge it without following it. You do not shame yourself for feeling it. You do not interpret it as a sign that your healing is incomplete. You simply recognize it for what it is, the residue of a performance engineered specifically to survive long after the performer moved on, and then you make your decision from the clarity that sits above the feeling, not from the feeling itself. Then you say nothing. You give no response. Not warm, not cold, not explanatory, not confrontational. You simply do not engage. Every form of response, even a firm rejection, is a form of access. It reveals where you are. It gives something to work with. And something to work with is all this kind of person needs to begin finding their way back in. Your silence is not avoidance, and it is not cruelty. Your silence is the most complete statement you have ever made to this person. It communicates, I understand exactly what this is, and I have already made my decision. The absence of a response is the most final and powerful response available to you. That one choice made clearly and held without drama is the most visible evidence of how completely you have transformed since this situation began. Beyond that decision, here is what the period ahead holds for you. The financial and career picture around your life has real movement in it. Something that was obscured, complicated, or stalled by the previous situation is gaining clarity. Your ability to build without interference, without someone misusing your name, misdirecting your resources, or managing how others perceive you, has been fully restored. And what you build going forward will reflect who you actually are, without distortion imposed from outside. What is moving toward you in terms of genuine connection is closer than it has been in a long time, not simply because you survived something difficult, because you emerged from it knowing yourself more precisely and completely than you did when you entered it. You know clearly what you will not accept. You recognize what performance looks like the moment it appears. You understand the difference between someone who actually sees you and someone who is simply constructing a mirror to use. That knowledge makes you extraordinarily selective, and that selectivity is what protects the quality of everything that enters your life from this point forward. What you have been prepared for the real thing, let it come. Your name is clean, not because you argued for it, but because your actual life made the lie impossible to sustain. Your future is intact, not in spite of what was done to you, but because of how you moved through it without becoming something lesser in the process. What was designed to diminish you concentrated you instead. What was designed to scatter your focus sharpened it. What was engineered to make you permanently doubt yourself produced, in the end, the most precise self-knowledge you have ever carried. This person told the fabrication to the wrong person, not a stranger, not someone peripheral, someone inside their own circle who had both the love and the means to actually check what they had been told. That choice, made with the overconfidence of someone who had never been caught before, is the single moment where the entire architecture began to give way. Not a move you made, not anything you initiated, their own surplus of arrogance, their own inability to stop when stopping was the only intelligent option remaining. You were not the agent of this exposure. You were the standard against which the fabrication was finally measured and found to be nothing. Your actual life, consistent, clean, and genuinely built from the inside out, is precisely what made the lie impossible to maintain once someone placed it side by side with your reality. They did not fall because of what you did, they fell because of what you are, and what you are cannot be faked, replicated, or permanently obscured. That is sovereignty. That is what it looks like when a chosen one refuses to be corrupted by what tried to corrupt them and simply lets the truth take care of the rest. The crown was never removed from your head. You were simply in a season when someone needed you to doubt that it was there. That season is over. Stand fully in who you are. Everything that is moving toward you now has been waiting patiently, precisely, specifically, for exactly this version of you. The version that went through the fire, came out intact, and now knows with complete certainty who they have always been. It is ready for you, and you are ready.